In the heart of a bustling city filled with wealth and poverty standing side by side, lived Ethan Carter, a man whose fortune could buy him anything, except happiness. Despite being a successful millionaire with a powerful reputation, Ethan's life was haunted by emptiness. His late wife had passed away years ago, leaving him childless and lonely. As his age advanced and his health began to falter, the fear of dying without an heir consumed him. His vast empire, his legacy, everything he had built, felt meaningless without someone to inherit not just his wealth, but his name and dreams. Driven by desperation, Ethan began exploring unconventional options. Surrogacy agencies and adoption centers all turned him away, either because of his emotional instability or his controlling demands. He wanted not just a child, but his own bloodline. One rainy evening, fate intervened. While returning from a charity gala, Ethan's car stopped near an alley where he saw a young homeless woman sitting by a fire, shivering under a torn blanket. Her eyes, though tired, reflected courage, a kind of strength money couldn't buy. Her name was Lila, a woman who had lost everything after being betrayed and abandoned. She was living on the streets, struggling to find food, warmth, and purpose. Ethan, struck by her resilience, made an impulsive yet life-changing decision. He approached her with a shocking proposal, to carry his child in exchange for a life of comfort and a fortune that could change her destiny forever. At first, Lila thought it was a cruel joke. How could a man of such status want someone like her, a woman society had already forgotten? But when she saw the sincerity in his eyes and heard the desperation in his voice, she realized this was no ordinary offer. He wasn't looking for love, he was trying to fill a void that no amount of money could heal. Ethan offered her a mansion to live in, complete medical care, and financial security for life, all in return for one thing, a child. Lila hesitated, torn between her dignity and her survival. But as she looked at the cold streets she called home, she made the hardest decision of her life. That night, a contract was signed, not just in ink, but in destiny. Neither of them knew that this strange arrangement, born out of loneliness and desperation, would lead to emotions neither had planned for, and a truth that would shock them both when the child was finally born. After agreeing to the millionaire's offer, Lila was moved from the cold streets into a luxurious mansion, a world she had never imagined entering. From sleeping on cardboard boxes to waking up in silk sheets, the change felt unreal. Yet, deep inside, she didn't feel free. The walls around her were gold and marble, but to her, they still felt like a cage. For the first time in years, Lila had access to proper food, clothing, and medical care. Doctors visited daily, and nutritionists planned every meal to ensure the baby's health. But despite all the luxury, she couldn't escape the heaviness in her heart. She often stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline, wondering if she had sold not just her body but her soul. Every kick of the baby inside her reminded her of the strange bargain she had made, a child born not from love, but from desperation and money. Ethan, the millionaire, treated her with politeness but also distance. He rarely spoke about personal matters, focusing instead on medical reports, diet plans, and legal documents. To him, it was a project, one that had to be managed perfectly. But Lila wasn't a project. She was a woman with emotions, fears, and dreams that had long been buried under pain. She often cried at night, her tears soaking into the expensive pillows, thinking of the child growing within her and what kind of life awaited them. The staff treated her respectfully, but whispers followed her everywhere. Some pitied her, others judged her, calling her the bought mother. Every glance reminded her of her social place, a homeless woman living in luxury only because she carried a rich man's child. Yet, as the months went by, something unexpected began to happen. Ethan started noticing her quiet strength, how she spoke gently to the unborn baby, how she never complained despite the loneliness, how she found beauty in small things like the sunrise or a stray cat wandering in the garden. Her simplicity and kindness began to melt the coldness in his heart. Meanwhile, Lila's feelings shifted too. She began to see glimpses of humanity in the man behind the money, a loneliness that mirrored her own. Though their relationship was bound by a contract, something far deeper began to grow between them, a fragile connection neither could define. Lila's struggle was no longer just about survival. It was about rediscovering her worth, her emotions, and her power to bring light into a life that had long forgotten how to feel. As the pregnancy progressed, the bond between Ethan and Lila began to evolve in ways neither of them had anticipated. What started as a cold, transactional arrangement slowly transformed into something deeply human, a connection that blurred the lines between compassion, curiosity, and quiet affection. Ethan, who had once approached Lila's pregnancy like a business deal, found himself drawn to her presence. He began visiting her more frequently, sometimes under the pretense of checking on her health, other times simply to talk. These visits, at first brief and awkward, grew longer with each passing week. Lila's gentle nature, her unfiltered honesty, and her quiet strength intrigued him. She never fawned over his wealth nor treated him with fear or admiration. To her, he was just a man, lonely, wounded, and seeking something he couldn't define. One evening, when rain poured softly outside, Ethan found Lila in the library reading a worn-out children's book. She smiled faintly and said, "I used to read this when I was little, before everything fell apart." That small moment, so raw and genuine, touched something deep within him. It reminded him of warmth, of the family he once dreamed of, and of the innocence he had lost long ago. From that night, he began to see her not as the woman carrying his child, but as a person with a story of her own, one marked by pain, endurance, and quiet dignity. Lila, on the other hand, started noticing the man behind the millionaire image. Ethan's stern eyes softened when he talked about his late wife. His confidence hid an ocean of grief. She saw how he lingered near the nursery room, staring at the empty cradle that symbolized both hope and fear. Slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. Small gestures started to define their relationship, a shared meal, a walk in the garden, a laugh over an old memory. For the first time, Lila felt seen not as a surrogate, but as someone who mattered. And Ethan, in turn, began to feel something he hadn't felt in years, peace. Their bond was unspoken yet undeniable. Beneath the surface of their unusual arrangement grew a fragile thread of emotional intimacy, something neither money nor contracts could create. They were two broken souls, finding comfort in each other's company. Neither realized it then, but the connection they were building would soon change not just their lives, but the destiny of the child they both awaited. The final days of Lila's pregnancy were filled with a mix of anticipation, fear, and strange calmness. Ethan made sure the best doctors, nurses, and equipment were ready. The mansion turned silent, every servant, every hallway seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the cry of new life that would mark the beginning of Ethan's long-awaited heir. When the moment finally arrived, the sky outside was heavy with thunder. Lila's labor was long and exhausting. Ethan waited outside the delivery room, pacing restlessly, his heart pounding harder than it ever had during a business deal or a board meeting. For a man used to controlling everything in life, this moment was one he could not command. Hours passed until, finally, the cry of a newborn echoed through the hall. Relief flooded him, the child was here. His heir. His future. But the joy was short-lived. When the nurse placed the baby in his arms, Ethan froze. His face drained of color. The child, beautiful, small, and fragile, bore something utterly impossible, a tiny birthmark shaped like a heart on the left shoulder, identical to the one his late wife had. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. That mark had been unique, a detail he remembered so vividly that seeing it again felt like being haunted by a ghost. He stared at the baby, trembling. Logic screamed it was coincidence, yet his heart whispered otherwise. Memories of his late wife, Clara, flooded back, her laughter, her promise that love always finds its way back. For a man who believed in reason, this moment shattered his understanding of everything. Lila, weak but smiling, looked at the baby with pure affection. She didn't notice Ethan's turmoil at first. But when she saw his expression, the mix of shock and disbelief, she asked softly, "Is something wrong?" Ethan could barely answer. "No, it's just, impossible," he murmured, his voice breaking. Doctors confirmed the child was healthy. But for Ethan, the true mystery was not medical, it was spiritual. He began to wonder if the universe had brought this child, and even Lila, into his life for a reason beyond any contract or money. That night, as he watched Lila hold the baby close, Ethan felt something stir in him, a feeling deeper than wealth or ownership. This wasn't just his child. It was a second chance, a reminder that love, no matter how lost, always finds a way to return, sometimes in the most unexpected form. After the shocking revelation at the birth, Ethan's world began to shift in ways he had never imagined. The child, with the mysterious birthmark of his late wife, was more than an heir, it was a symbol of fate, love, and destiny intertwining. For the first time in years, Ethan felt emotions he thought had been buried forever: awe, humility, and a profound sense of responsibility that went far beyond money or contracts. He began to look at Lila differently. She was no longer just the woman who had agreed to carry his child for a fortune, she was a brave, selfless individual who had endured hardship and fear while giving life to someone neither of them could have predicted. Her strength, her compassion, and her unwavering care for the baby stirred something deep in him: gratitude, admiration, and even affection. Ethan realized that his original plan, born out of loneliness and desperation, had been cold and transactional. Money could buy comfort, food, and security, but it could not buy the love that now filled the room, the quiet bond forming between mother, child, and himself. Slowly, he began to engage with them, holding the baby gently, asking Lila how she felt, even sharing small conversations that were not about rules or contracts but about life, dreams, and hope. Lila, initially cautious, noticed the change in Ethan. He was no longer distant and detached, he was present, attentive, and genuinely caring. His actions showed a commitment far beyond obligation, he was choosing to be part of their lives because he wanted to, not because a contract required it. In those moments, a fragile but undeniable family bond began to emerge. Ethan also began to confront his own grief and guilt over his late wife. The baby, with her birthmark and innocent eyes, reminded him that life could offer second chances in the most unexpected ways. He recognized that happiness was not a matter of wealth or power, but of connection, compassion, and presence. By the time the child was a few weeks old, Ethan had made a promise to himself and to Lila: he would protect, nurture, and love them both. No longer driven by selfish desire for an heir, he embraced his new role as a father and a partner in the child's life, ready to create a family built not on money, but on understanding, care, and shared humanity. The unusual arrangement that had begun as a business transaction had transformed into something far richer, a true family bound by love, fate, and the unexpected miracles life could bring. It was a lesson Ethan would carry forever: some of life's most profound treasures cannot be bought, only cherished.